The following story is 100% true and is something that I've tried to make sense of for the last 25 years. This actually happened to me, or at least I think it did. And the reason that I'm making this video is to try and get viewers' perspectives on what they think actually happened. When I was 9 years old, I moved into a 2-bedroom flat with my mother in a suburban village in the UK called Enderby. We'd previously lived in a small house around a mile down the road in the neighbouring village of Narborough, and although the flat wasn't a dream home, it was a much bigger property than we'd had before, and the garden was far bigger. It wasn't a large property, but for the two of us, it was big enough. Now, just to explain, these weren't multi-storey high-rise apartments. The building consisted of only 2 floors, the lower ground flat and the first floor flat. Ours was the one on the first floor. We lived in the property for a few years, and in that time there were a number of events that took place which I remember being quite scary. But now as an adult I just don't have a logical explanation of what I experienced there. I guess as the years progress and life begins to get more complicated, it's easy to forget or for more realistic problems to get in the way, and suddenly these weird encounters become a distant memory and we just don't think about them as much. At least that's what I think has happened to me. The memory that stands out the most for me happened during the summer of 1995. I'm not sure when the property had been built, but it definitely wasn't a new build. It had been standing for many decades and looked very dated by the time that we had moved in. It was decorated nicely on the inside, but from the outside looking in, it was clear that the property had a lot of history. Now, when I was young, it was common for my bedroom door to be routinely left ajar during the night. The landing light would stay powered on from the moment that I went to sleep until the following morning. I wasn't scared of the dark, so to speak, so I'm not really sure why my mother did this, but it just became a habit. Perhaps it was just to offer some guidance should I need the bathroom or need a drink during the night. Who knows? I mean, the reason here isn't essential to the story, but the fact that the light was on is important. My bed was positioned adjacent to the door, with the headrest directly opposite the door frame. That meant that from my bed, I could look out into the hallway, and from that standpoint, I could see 2 doors. One leading into my mother's bedroom, and the other door behind that leading into our living room. On this night in particular, I woke at around 3 AM. I remember the time vaguely from the red LED display of the alarm clock which was positioned on my nightstand. Now at this age I didn't really wake up in the night very much, unless I was thirsty or needed the bathroom, but on this occasion it felt like I'd been disrupted by something. The neighbourhood was a quiet one, a good distance from any busy roads and motorways, and in the dead of night it was incredibly peaceful, so being disturbed usually wasn't a problem to have, especially during the night. I'm not sure why I didn't just close my eyes and go back to sleep, but on this occasion I just lay there in bed and gazed out onto the landing. After a few moments, only seconds really, I saw a slight motion from the hallway. At this time in my life we didn't have any pets, and the movement was so slow that it definitely wasn't my mother. I froze to my bed as an elderly lady and a small girl walked silently out from the living room and entered the hall, a mere 4 or 5 meters away from where I lay. The woman looked to be in her 60s, maybe 70s at a push, and the young girl was around 6 years of age. There was something off about the way that they moved. The motion was very fluid, but incredibly slow, and although we had relatively thick carpet on the landing, their feet didn't make a single sound as they entered the hallway. Not a single scuff or a squeak of a floorboard. Utter silence. The only thing that I could hear at this time was the sound of my breath. They weren't wearing modern clothes for the mid-90s either. The young girl, for instance, was wearing an antiquated white lace dress with a matching bonnet on her head. The old lady was also wearing a white dress, but this was more of a cotton garment with a dotted pattern. As I stared, unable to move, they turned and slowly travelled towards my mother's bedroom. I wanted to call out, but I couldn't make as much as a murmur. It's hard to explain, but I felt like a statue. My eyes were locked onto two people standing in the hall in the dead of night, but I wasn't able to do anything about it. It's the only time in my life that I've experienced this. I guess the best way that I can describe it would be to imagine having locked-in syndrome. As the pair now stood at the doorway to my mother's bedroom, the old lady placed her hand gently on the handle of the door, and as she was about to open it, that was when the young girl turned her head to the left and stared straight back at me. We made eye contact for a few seconds. I felt cold and my heart raced. That was when the old lady turned her head too and stared in at me through the open doorway. This part felt like it lasted for minutes, but in reality it was probably more like just a few seconds. Eventually, the old lady and girl turned to look at each other before turning slowly and exiting back through the living room door that they had emerged from moments earlier. Still, not a single sound. And then they were gone. Even then, I still couldn't move or make a sound. In fact, I don't actually remember going back to sleep. I recall the sunrise at around 5 AM and still lying motionless until my mother woke up and left her bedroom. As soon as she emerged from her room, I was able to move again and leave my bed. I don't remember the faces of the old lady or the little girl, which I find peculiar. I also don't recall telling my mother what I'd seen, but she informs me that I told her immediately what had happened and that I was very, very distressed. Around a year later, we moved again, to a house on the same street, believe it or not. The flat in question was actually bulldozed 3 years later to make way for new houses, and my mother still lives on that street. Whenever I take my family to visit, I often think about that old flat and the weird things that happened there. All I can say with any real certainty is that whatever happened on that night absolutely terrified me, and after 25 years I still remember the event as clear as day. They definitely weren't intruders, but were they real? I'm eager to hear what theories viewers may have, and that's the sole purpose for this video. Please leave me a comment to let me know what you think. Your input may finally help me put this to bed after many years of uncertainty. If this video gets a positive response, I'll look into perhaps giving more details of the other events that happened in that property. Just saying all of this out loud has acted as a form of therapy for me. It's good to get these things out on the table, as this isn't something that I've spoken about for almost 2 decades. So if you'd like to see more content like this, please give the video a like and click the subscribe button. If the response is good enough, then I'll keep this channel going with new content. Thank you for watching.